Advice from Hive Mind is back, and today let's look in detail at Tyranids in 8th edition. What's good, what's bad, what's ugly. Hi guys, Aceface back with another video for you, and today we're going to have a little look at Tyranids in 8th edition. I have the index at hand. We're going to grab in, we're going to go and have a look, we're going to look at the detail, we're going to find out what's good, bad, ugly, what you should be taking, what you should avoid, general overview on what Tyranids are now like, how we're built to play, what the strengths, weaknesses are, you name it, we'll look into it. We'll keep it as brief as is possible to still give you the detail that you need. But what I will do, what I intend to do, is go back into each individual unit once I get more opportunity to play with the individual units, find out what tactics really work with those types of units, and do a little bit more detail stuff. But today we're going to look at what you should be looking at, what you should avoid, where the strengths are from an overview. I've got a relatively small experience with playing them, only played a few little games with them, plenty more to come. But I can assure you that I have invested a great many hours on absolutely looking inside and out this index. There'll be bits that I've missed, and what will help everybody is if you do spot stuff as I go through that I've missed, or stuff that you think's really powerful or really useful, do put it in the comments below, because I know it will help other people. Okay, so let's start off with Tyranids as a whole. So Tyranids, or Hive Mind, or Hive Fleet is the keyword, and you just insert your Hive Fleet into there as your keyword to pick your army from. So as a general thing, so Tyranids as a whole have got a hell of a lot better, and that's possibly the biggest understatement of the century, because Tyranids are the real deal now, guys. So let's talk a little bit about the general Tyranid rules. So Synapse we have. So Synapse, as many of you will be aware, if you're coming into the game and you don't know sort of 7th edition, absolutely cool. But Synapse basically is a aura or a range where if your models that have instinctive behavior are within Synapse range, then those units are affected by it. And the effect that Synapse has is any unit within 8 inches of a Synapse creature, and we'll go through those Synapse creatures in a little bit, will have immunity or do not need to take morale tests. So that's a really big deal, because in 8th edition morale is a huge factor. It can absolutely make or break your combats, make or break your units. They will flee, and the leadership of a lot of the small bugs in particular is not very good. So having that automatically passing morale tests is a huge factor, and that's within 8 inches now. So the Synapse range has got a little bit shorter. There are a few ways of extending that Synapse range, but really cool. The nice thing though, where we used to have in 7th edition, if something was not in Synapse range, then things went big time bad really quickly. It's not the same anymore. So basically instinctive behavior means that if you're outside of instinctive behavior, if you're outside of Synapse range, you need to shoot and charge the nearest target. So that doesn't stop you from moving wherever you want and being able to decide where you want to go on the board. So ultimately it's not going to break your tactics, but you do need to kind of consider it, particularly if you've got units that really need to stay stationary. Then they may be forced to shoot at a certain target, which could be a big factor. So it's still very important, and of course, as I said previously, those small bugs won't be immune to morale tests, which could have a big impact on them really taking damage. So that's your key kind of rules. You also have Shadow in the Warp. Now Shadow in the Warp mainly is linked to pretty much all of the Synapse creatures, and basically what that means is that Psychers that are within that Synapse range, which is basically 8 inch of anything that has Shadow in the Warp, they subtract 1 from their psychic tests, which is good. It's not really too powerful, It's not going to really hurt them, but if you have a very, very psychically driven army, which is much less a thing in 8th edition, it's a nice little bonus. So we go on to Psychic Powers. So Psychic Powers really, really good. We've just got 3 Psychic Powers now. That's it. No Primus, no 6 powers. But the good thing is every single one of these powers is really, really handy, really, really useful. So you can choose either to roll and decide what one of these powers you've got, or you can just pick the ones you want. So I think everyone will pretty much pick, but you never know. If you're playing a narrative game, maybe you'll want to roll on it, or maybe certain tournaments will make you roll on it. I don't know, but I think the majority of people will end up just picking their power. So the 3 powers you have the Horror. Now the Horror has a unit of 24 inches, and you cast it on an enemy unit, and that unit then, if you pass it, it has a value of 6, so you need to roll 2 dice and you need to beat 6 to successfully get it off, and obviously your opponent needs to not beat that. But if you get it off, the unit that you've targeted at must subtract 1 from their leadership rolls and their hit rolls. Now the hit rolls is the really, really crucial thing here, because having a -1 to hit is really powerful, really powerful. So that's an incredible, useful power, just because it's going to make things, particularly because it's quite a good range, and what you'll find in 8th edition when you've played a few games is things get into range a lot quicker than they used to. So 24-inch range is actually very, very powerful, very, very good, particularly because your units are moving up so much quicker, and your opponent is advancing quicker. And to be able to get that -1 to hit will really stop some of the really nasty shooting being anywhere near as effective. So even though when you think of that in comparison to the older edition, you might think that's not that great, but actually that's incredibly powerful, and you can link that with a few other abilities that I will go into later on in the review. So Catalyst, let's talk about Catalyst. That's the next power. Catalyst is quite similar to how Catalyst was. It is a kind of feel no pain as such. So you cast it on, this only works on 1 unit, so it's not the case of the unit and another unit like it was in 7th edition, but basically it has an 18-inch range. It has again a casting value of 6, so you're going to get it off more times than you're going to miss it. You target a Tyranid unit within 18 inches, and until the next psychic phase, when the model suffers a wound or a mortal wound, which is really crucial, you can roll a d6, on a 5 or 6 the model does not lose a wound. So the big thing about this is when you kind of learn how 8th edition works, this roll happens after you've got all your damage. So you're going to have to roll quite a lot of dice if you're using this against something that does multiple damage, but ultimately it's going to give you another chance to stay alive. A 5 and a 6 is quite tasty, and it's a great one to keep some of your really key units alive and kicking for a little bit longer, and hope and try and stop them from taking that damage that will reduce their stats, that again we'll talk about in a little bit of detail. Onslaught is the last power. Now Onslaught is a great power. Onslaught, you use it on a friendly unit. Again, it is a casting value of 6. And you use it on a unit within 18 inches, and that unit can advance and shoot this turn without suffering any penalties from a ballistic skill for moving, shooting heavy weapons, or advancing and shooting assault weapons in addition. So it just means that you can be quite effective with getting you guys that little bit closer. Some things are pretty quick as well, so that extra movement will get a lot of things in range. It's a really underestimated power and will be very good. It's probably the, I would say, in my mind, early use, it's the weaker of the 3, but in certain positions it's by far the strongest. So 3 very, very useful powers. So that's the overall Tyranids. Let's jump into the first few units. Right guys, so I'm going to start at the beginning of the index and we'll work through. I'm not sure how much of them are in an order. I think they're pretty much in an order. But we'll start off with these HQs, because it seems to be HQs first. So we'll start off with the old trusty Hive Tyrant. So the Hive Tyrant, as you know, it has changed quite dramatically. He is still a very, very good unit, so don't worry. You can release a sigh of relief. All those Hive Tyrants that you've got do not need throwing in the bin. They are not useless. They are still a very, very effective unit. However, potentially the way that we've been playing those Hive Tyrants, and particularly those flying Hive Tyrants, I think you'll find has massively changed. So The Hive Tyrant in itself, he is still Strength 6, he is still Toughness 6. He now has 10 wounds, which is good. It does mean it takes him over the threshold, so he can be targeted by any weapons at any time, which is a bit of a downer in a way, because that does mean that he can be a target straight away. If he had less than 10 wounds, he wouldn't be able to be targeted unless he was the closest model. So he has 5 attacks, he has leadership 10, and he has a 3-up save. So you might say quite similar to how you had previously, same sort of attacks. You know, obviously more wounds, but everything has more wounds in 8th edition. His weapon skill and ballistic skill though are slightly different, and his movement changes dramatically. So his weapon skill, if he's taken no wounds at all, his weapon skill is he always hits on a 2, which is awesome. And his ballistic skill, if he's not taking any damage, he hits on a 3, which is the same as what it was. So decent stuff. Now, as he loses wounds, once he goes down to, he's lost 3 to 5 wounds, he then hits on a 3 in combat, and he still hits on a 3 in shooting, which is good. He doesn't take too much of a hit, which is tasty. When he's on his last couple of wounds, he hits in combat on a 4+, and he hits with shooting on a 4+. But again, not the end of the world, which means he will be fairly effective all the way through until he dies, which is good. So he is also not too expensive from a points point of view as stock standard. We'll look at points probably a little bit at the end, but I can assure you he's not that expensive. He's a lot cheaper than he was previously, but the way that points work for units is very different. You have to, they come pretty much bare bones, and you pay for everything. So even though in reflection you think a lot of units are very, very cheap, they do stack up points pretty quickly. Okay, so what does he have? So he has his kind of standard loadout is 2 sets of monstrous scything talons. Now, monstrous scything talons are extremely good, really good. There's a few different ones. These I would say are kind of your mid-range scything talons. They are users strength. They are -3 AP, and they are 3 damage each, so really good. He also comes with a tail, and the tail is again user strength. It's D3 damage, no AP, so pretty good there, not too bad. He can take a ton of different war gear, absolutely loads, and we'll go through them a little bit at the end. But one of the big things I was going to say, as I said, I'm trying to keep this kind of brief and concise for you. One of the big things is what you're going to find is the Twin Link Devourers. They're no big deal anymore. They're decent, they're still not like a throwaway, they're okay, but they're nowhere near as powerful as they once were. So I would kind of potentially think about those arms probably need to come off, guys, and you probably want to think about just getting Talons on there. Talons are a better weapon. The Tyrant's going to be able to get in combat a lot more often than he was before, and you'll probably find that those Talons are going to be more useful. The other 2 heavy weapons, the Strangleforce Cannon and the Venom Cannon, or the Heavy Venom Cannon should I say, are decent weapons now. I'll go through their profiles at the end, but they are much better again than the Twin Link Devourers. So again, Twin Link Devourers is your first probably impact in this review. Twin Link Devourers are pretty much a thing of the past. I don't think we'll see very many of them on the table, but we will wait and see. So his movement, so if he is a foot slogging Tyrant, which now are very useful still, he moves at 9 with no damage. He then goes down to 7 and to 5. So he's pretty quick, even up, he just gets a bit slow when he gets on his last couple of wounds, but 9 inches as a standard move is pretty quick. If you give him wings, which is quite a lot more expensive, but as you'd expect, he can move 16 to 12 and then to 8. But he has the fly special rule, which is very handy because it means you can lock something up, then jump out of combat, shoot it or whatever, and then assault again or assault something else with no benefit from breaking back. So very useful ability. So having wings is still a very big deal. Okay, so what else does he have? He has some nice little things. So he has Shadow of the Warp, obviously he's a Synapse creature, of course. He has something called the Will of a Hive Mind, and that means that his Synapse range and Shadow of the Warp range are extended to 12 inches rather than 8, and that's really key. You really want to make sure that Synapse web is really strong, so that's nice straight away. There's no command ability or anything like that. It's literally, that's just what he's got, so that's great. He has something called Death Throes, which we'll go over again and again as we go through, but I'll sum it up in this first review, this first unit. So Death Throes basically all the monsters as they die, so when they go down to 0 wounds, you roll a 6, you roll a dice, and on a 6 he'll lash out as he kind of dies, basically. And each unit within 3 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds, which I think is going to be hilarious. But it's one of the ones that we will forget regularly, and I've already forgotten that a couple of times. So just keep that in your mind, because pretty much every single monstrous creature will have it, and it will be the difference between potentially killing something and not killing it. He also has something called the Psychic Barrier, so he has a 5-up invuln, which is great because we never used to have that before. So he's more survivable as well, more survivable than he ever has been. So that's great, that's absolutely great. He can do 2 psychic powers, which is awesome. So you can have 2 of those psychic powers. Obviously he has Smite, everybody knows Smite, that's a Psyker. So again, great little things there. So all in all, the Hive Tyrant's still one to take, but I will probably be looking at taking him with those Talons. Makes him really deadly in combat. He's a bit of a beat stick, and he'll be very quick to get into combat, so still very, very good. And let's move on to the next unit. And this guy is the all-star. This is your MVP. This is the big man himself, and so he should be. The Swarm Lord is back. He is back with a vengeance. He is the closest thing to, I would say, an auto-include in a 2,000 point game. He is an incredible, incredible unit. The Swarm Lord is 300 points, so he's not cheap, but that, for what he can do, is awesome. This guy on the charge will take out pretty much anything else on the planet, anything else in the Warhammer 40,000 universe this guy can deal with. He is a beat stick, and one not to be underestimated. So let's jump straight in, and let's talk about the Swarm Lord. So the Swarm Lord always hits on a 2. He always, when he's shooting, not that he really shoots, hits on a 3. His strength changes depending on how damaged he is. We'll go over that in a second. And his toughness is 6, so same as the Hive Tyrant. He has 12 wounds, so he has a couple more wounds than the Hive Tyrant. His attacks again change depending on how damaged he is. His leadership's 10, and he has a 3-up save. So he moves 9 inches. So let's have a quick look. He's the same speed as a walking tyrant, which you'd expect. He then goes down to 7 and then to 5 when he's really damaged. And he starts off at strength 8, which is awesome, really, really cool. So he has a bit of strength behind him as well. Strength 8 is really, really handy. He then goes down to strength 7, and then when he's on his last legs, he goes to strength 6. So incredible stats there. Attacks, and this is where it gets mental. He has 7 attacks at full strength. Then he goes down to 6 and then to 5. So even when he's on 1 or 2 wounds, he's still only then on the same amount of attacks as a Hive Tyrant. So this guy means business. But let's jump into the really exciting bit, which is his melee weapons, which are off the chart. So bearing in mind that he is always hitting on a 2, and he has a strength 8 with no damage. His bone sabers are strength user, so that will be strength 8 with no damage. Their AP is -3, so that means even things with an awesome save are probably only going to have a 6 or a 5 or a 6 save, or an invuln at best. This is where it gets mental. His damage is D6 for each one of those, and bearing in mind every single one's just basically going to hit because he hits on a 2. And with a strength 8, probably majority of things are going to wound. Even if he's going against something really, really tough, maybe half of them are going to wound. But still, most of them are going to get through, and then D6 with each one of them. So unless they've got an awesome invuln, they are going down. He is taking out serious amounts of wounds. He also has a tail. Now the tail is strength 6, again D3 damage, not that great. He has the Shadow in the Warp, as always, Synapse. He has the same Psychic Barrier as the normal Tyrant, so a 5-up invuln. He does have +1 to his invuln save when he's in combat, so that goes up to a 4-up, which is the same as what he used to have. But then he has a wicked ability. Now this ability is, again, a game changer, which is probably why he becomes a bit of an auto-include. Something that has been publicised, but let's talk about it. He has a rule called Hive Commander. So in each of your shooting phases, you can pick one friendly Hive Fleet, so Hive Fleet Voro, obviously, unit within 6 inches of the Swarm Lord. That unit can move, advance, if it wishes, as if it was in the movement phase instead of shooting. Just that, you have to just think for a minute, particularly with things able to deep strike down, that's just mental. That's off the scale. That's guaranteed first turn charges. That's just mental, absolutely mental, because there are so many units within this index that will rip the pieces out of most things in the game, and you're giving them an opportunity to get in first turn, which is really going to put a dampener on your opponent's tactics. It's incredibly powerful, and one that will make this guy in most lists, in my opinion. He has the extended synapse range again, not too surprised there, and again he has the death throw, so he'll do damage as he dies. He can attempt to manifest 2 psychic powers as well, and he knows obviously the same psychic powers. So that is the Swarm Lord. Really, really cool unit. Let's jump into Old One Eye. So Old One Eye, again, not a bad unit now. A unit that you'd never see on the battlefield. Absolute pile of rubbish. He's now rightly priced, and he's a bit of a big deal. He's not too bad at all. So he moves 7, so he's a bit quicker. Not massively, but a bit quicker. He has weapon skill that is dependent on how damaged he is. His strength is again dependent on how damaged he is. Toughness 7, which is good. 10 wounds, which is decent. Again, below that threshold. They've done it on purpose, so these big monstrous creatures can always be targeted. Bit of a shame. It does mean you need to do a little bit of a tactic, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Attacks, he has, again, depending on how damaged he is, he has a leadership of 7, which is actually not too bad in the new edition, and a save of 3+. So let's jump in to find out how things change. So strength is, he hits on freeze when he's not damaged, and that only goes down to 4 on his last couple of wounds. His strength is 7, that goes down to 6 after he's taken 3 wounds, after he's got 3 wounds left, and that goes down to 5 when he's got 2 to 1 wounds left. His attacks start at 5, they go to 3, and then they go to D3. So he does become a bit useless when he's on his last couple of wounds, but there you go. But actually, 5 attacks at full strength is incredibly powerful, very, very good. He has monstrous crushing claws. They are ×2 strength, and things aren't topped out at 10 now. So his strength will go up to being a lovely 14. Strength 14. That's mental. -3 AP and damage 3. Damage 3 is absolutely not to be underestimated. In a lot of cases, damage 3 is better than a D6 because it takes that kind of ability of just messing that roll up. You know you're consistently taking those 3 damage, and quite often I would rather have something with a guarantee 3 because you can almost calculate things a little bit better on a damage 3 than you can on a D6, because the amount of times you'll roll a 1 or a 2, you know, it's a pain in the arse, but actually having that 3 damage means you're consistently hitting 3 wounds off that unit. So it's not too bad. So really, really good, solid ability there on his crushing claws. He does have to subtract 1 to hit, which is kind of the mechanic that's in everything that's kind of a big, unwieldy weapon. So that means he's always pretty much going to be hitting on a 4. Does kind of reduce him a little bit. It means he's only going to be hitting with 50-50 of those attacks, but we'll go on to why that's not such a problem. He has Talons as well, so you can take his Talons. So if you don't want him to be missing so many, you can take his Talons. He won't have the higher strength, so if you're going against a unit that's a bit more squishy, you can go for that because it's the same damage. -3 AP, 3 damage. Exactly the same. He can also re-roll 1s when attacking with a weapon. So unless you're attacking something that's really, really beefy and you need to kind of be wounding it on 2s, you probably go with the Talons and just cut it apart with the Talons. He has a tail. Tail's not too bad. You'll find these tails are a bit kind of meh. We won't go into too much detail on them, but a lot of these monstrous creatures have a tail or an option of taking a tail. He then has a few cool little things. So he has Immortal Battering Ram. And what that does is on a 4+, when you move into charge, the unit takes, 1 unit takes D3 mortal wounds, which is a nice little factor. Very similar to the normal Carnifex one. I think it's a little bit more powerful, but we'll go to the Carnifex one when we get there. He has Alpha Leader, so you can add 1 to hit in the fight phase for any Carnifex within 6 inches of the model, which means actually, because with the price that Carnifexes cost now, you can actually realistically take Carnifex armies which is going to be tons of fun, and actually around our one eye they're going to be really viciously dangerous. Zurcher Rampage. Now this is the thing that makes that slight lack of attack really effective, because basically each time he makes a successful hit with old One Eye, except his tail, you can immediately make one additional attack with the same weapon against the same unit. These additional attacks do not confer extra attacks, but you know, ultimately, particularly if you're using the Talons and you're hitting on a 3 re-rolling 1s, you're going to get a fair few attacks. So the chances are this guy is going to get another 3 or 4 attacks most combats, which is awesome. He also has regeneration as well, so at the beginning of each turn he can regain 1 wound lost earlier in the battle, which is decent, not to be underestimated at all. Keep him alive and potentially keep him in those higher damage brackets, which is cool. So that's our One Eye, a really good unit, and actually one that I would not hesitate in taking. Very, very good. Stick him maybe in a pod, use the Swarm Lord to use him to kind of push ahead, and he'll do damage. Really, really good unit. Right, we'll go on to the Broodlord. The Broodlord is, obviously now, the Broodlord has to go on his own, he can't hide in a unit, and he is an HQ unit, which is what everybody's been begging for such a long time, and now you can. So your Broodlord can be your boss, and you can do just a Tyranid Genestealer army. You don't need to go to Cult, you can actually just do a Tyranid Genestealer army, which is wicked, really, really cool. So, and to be fair, with the way the new edition works, there's very little. In most armies you can pretty much build the fluffy list that you've always wanted to, because there's so many ways of building, which is a great thing. So let's talk about the Broodlord very briefly. So the Broodlord is always going to hit on a 2, which is incredible. He is strength 5, toughness 5. He has 6 wounds, which means he can't be targeted unless he's the closest unit, which is a big thumbs up. He has 6 wounds, which is decent for a character. He has 6 attacks, which is great, because he's hitting on 2s. Leadership 10, 4 up save, which is decent. His Rending Claws are his user strength, so strength 5. He's -3 AP, which is great, and D3 damage, so very, very good. And you can re-roll wound rolls when attacking with this weapon. In addition, each time you make a wound roll of 6, is resolved at -6 and damage free. So basically they're his Rending Claws, but they're big old Rending Claws, so they're a bit more effective. So this guy don't miss much. He's quite expensive now. We'll talk about bit points at the end, but he's a bit pricey on points wise, but he's a good unit. He also is a Synapse creature, so that's very, very handy. He has a 5 up invuln, which is decent. He can charge even if he advances, so he's so quick with movement 8 and then rolling a d6 and then being able to charge. He's one that can realistically get first turn charges off. You can add 1 to hit in the fight phase for any Genestealer unit within range, within 6 inches of him, and that is where the money shot is. So basically if you're running that Genestealer army, this guy can make all those Genestealers even more dangerous. He can do 1 psychic power as well, so decent. Tyranid Prime, the Tyranid Prime, the cheap old Tyranid Prime. Well, not so cheap anymore. He's quite pricey, but then you can keep him bare bones. And I think what you'll find is in a lot of armies, your Tyranid Prime is your unit that sits at the back to make sure that your instinctive behavior, monstrous creatures, and your little guys hiding on objectives, whatever they may be, stay alive, because he won't be able to be targeted because he only has 6 wounds. And you can just sit there and do that job for you. So I think the Tyranid Prime is a really useful unit and one you'll see a lot. So we'll quickly, briefly go through his stats. So he has weapon skill hits on 2s, ballistic skill hits on 3s. He has strength 5, toughness 5, 6 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 10, and a 3 up save. And he can have a range of different weapons. So he can take a Devourer, which is pretty pants if I'm being brutally honest. Strength 4, 3 shots, damage 1. Take flesh hooks, which are assault 2, and this weapon can be fired within 1 inch of an enemy target, the target enemy unit within 1 inch of a friendly unit. So basically it's like a pistol, so you can use it in combat, but it doesn't really do much damage anyway. It's not that great. Scything Talons, we talk about Scything Talons. These are the basic Scything Talons, which basically means you can reroll 1, but if you have 2 sets, which is probably what you'll rock with this guy, you will be able to get an additional attack, which will take him up to 5 attacks, which is not bad, but you might take him with a gun. He can also take, so look what he can take. He can take bioweapons, which we'll have a little look at, but basically he can take a few guns as well, which are not too bad. His abilities, same as what he used to be basically. So he's got Alpha Warrior, which means that you can add 1 to hit roll for all warriors and shrikes that are within 6 inches of him. Again, not bad. Put him with close to some warriors that are potentially as well babysitting, and they can be quite effective, particularly if you give them some of the kind of the bigger guns, which you can, and the bigger guns are much good, so much better than they used to be. So the Venom Cannon, which always used to be the joke, is actually a very good weapon now, and the Barbed Strangler is very, very good as well. So that's him. Termagant. Termagant is a very interesting unit now, not the same at all in many ways, and I could probably do a whole video on the Termagant because you can play the Termagant in a number of different ways, and I'll try and keep it brief for you. But the Termagant is a very, very important unit, and in a lot of builds you're going to want to take one. So the Termagant, points wise, he's got a little bit more expensive, but so he has his stat line, he has movement changes, weapon skill changes, ballistic skill changes. His strength is 7, which is better than it used to be by a fair bit. It used to be 5. Strength 7 is brutally good. Toughness 8. Wraith Knight toughness. Beautiful stuff. So really, really cool toughness. He has 14 wounds. Awesome. Loads of wounds. 3 attacks. Leadership 9 and a 3-up save. So his stats move, so he starts with movement 8, then goes down to 6, then goes down to 4. His weapon skill starts with 4, and then it goes to 5, 5. Ballistic skill starts from 4, goes to 5, and goes to 6. As you can see there, his stats are decent. You probably don't want him in combat that much, you don't really want to depend on his shooting. But his weapons, so he has a Stinger Salvo, which is just 4 shots. Strength 5, -1 AP. It's nice to have the -1 AP, I do like that. Damage 1. His massive crushing claws that you can choose for him are ×2 strength. So that will take him up to 14 strength, which is crazy. D6 damage, brutal stuff. But he must subtract 1 to hit. But that's still great, you know. You think those 3 attacks, you roll hot, wow. You can be doing some serious damage. And then the massive Scythe and Talons, which would be probably the option that I would be thinking taking, because they're not -1 to hit, and he doesn't hit that well anyway, so you probably want to go for these. -3 AP, D6 damage, and you can re-roll 1s, and if you've got 2 sets, you get an additional attack. And I'm trying to think, I think he gets 2 sets? Not too sure, maybe not. So let's go on to the abilities where really the fun stuff begins. So he has Shadow in the Warp, obviously Synapse. He has Brood Protagonist, I can't even say it. You can re-roll hit rolls of 1 for Termagants within 6 inches. Similar sort of preferred enemy that they used to kind of have, I seem to remember. And Synaptic Backlash is similar as it used to be. So if a Termagant is reduced to 0 wounds, roll a d6 before removing the model from the battlefield. Each friendly unit of Termagants within 6 inches of the Termagant suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the result. So I think it's a bit better. It's not quite as dangerous as it used to be, but they won't get saves at all. But they only had a save of 6. So. But this is where the whole beauty of this unit comes. Spawning Termagants. Now you need to listen carefully to this, guys, because this has changed dramatically, changed hugely, and you need to play it in a few different ways. Okay, so I'm going to read it out to you first of all, and then I'm going to explain it. So spawn Termagants. At the end of your movement phase, a Termagant can spawn Termagants. If it does so, add a unit of 10 Termagants to your army and set it up on the battlefield so that it is wholly within 6 inches of the Termagant and more than 1 inch away from the enemy. All of these models are armed with flesh borers. Alternatively, you can replace up to 10 models lost earlier in the battle in an existing unit of Termagants from your army that is within 6 of the Termagant. Models replaced in this way must be within 6 inches of the Termagant and more than 1 inch from your enemy. You can only replace models armed with flesh borers. If you can't place some of the models, any excess is discarded. So why is that interesting? So the interesting thing with that is, for a start, if you want to use, you can use the Termagant as a drop pod, if you like, and I'll explain why. So basically, you have what's called reinforcement points now. So the unit of Termagants that you want to create, you have to pay for. Okay, so you could go for, say, I'm going to pay for 150 points of Termagants, so you could have 30 Termagants that you know you've got. Now what you can then do is your Termagant can move, advance, and then at the end of his movement phase, he can then drop 10 Termagants 6 inches away from himself. So you can imagine that you've made up quite a lot of distance there, and that's something you wouldn't have been able to do before. You can really get those Termagants really up nice and far, and use them as a barrier around him. So there's a really good tactic, and one that could be used very usefully, particularly if you've got multiple Termagants and you're doing that. And you've got the advantage of a little bit of surprise there as well, because you're cutting down on your deployment, so you've got more chance of going first. There's lots of tactical ways why that's a real advantage, but straight away people are going to go, ugh, I've got to pay for the Termagants. I never had to pay for them before and they're a chaffy unit. Why would I do that? And that's not a bad challenge, but that's where the second function comes in really crucially, because I know this will split people, but I can absolutely assure you that the way that this works in 8th edition, and the same in not just this case but in a few cases, if you are adding or regenerating, rebringing something back to life, it does not count towards your reinforcement points. So the way that this is worded is very clearly, so you do not pay reinforcement points if you are adding models that have died earlier in the battle back to a unit. That's not how it works, and that's why those two different options are there, for that exact reason. So if you can imagine what you do, these Termagants, they come up, they go into combat, there's no stipulation of whether these need to be engaged or not. These Termagants go into combat, the Termagant's behind, stopping them from running away, stopping them from taking additional damage. Every turn, that Termagant is then making more Termagants into that combat. So that unit that's against them either has to run away or has to put up with the fact that it needs to kill pretty much every single Termagant, or otherwise more and more being spawned. And that is incredibly good as a meat shield, and incredibly good at absolutely just tar-pitting someone down and holding those objectives with multiple models. Incredibly strong tactic, and one that makes this unit a very good choice for your army. So if you've got Termagants and you're playing them at the moment, you're going to have to rethink how you play them, because they play very differently, but Termagant is still a very effective unit. Okay, Termagant's also a Psyker, so he can manifest 1 psychic power. Okay, right, so I think there was one more HQ where he's hidden in here somewhere, or maybe he's not HQ anymore. Maybe he's not HQ. No, he's not an HQ. Ignore me. So that's your HQs anyway. So let's go into troops. I'm already losing my voice. I should have come up with some sort of cup of coffee or something ready to drink. So let's talk about troops. So we will talk about, we've got Tyranid warriors. So Tyranid warriors, very similar to as they used to be. They've not changed dramatically, so their stat line is identical as it was. It hasn't changed. It really hasn't. So I don't really need to go over it, but it hasn't changed. The big difference is the way that weapons now work. So whereas before having a toughness 4 would mean you get insta-killed, it doesn't work like that in 8th edition. And the way that saves work, again, doesn't work the same. So having the minus save rather than a, AP4, no save, doesn't work like that anymore. So because of that, it makes them a more efficient battleground unit. Also, on top of that, they're properly priced, so the right points for the unit. They're not too expensive. And also their weapons are very, very good. So their standard weapons are nothing great, you know. So your close combat weapons are your Talons and your flesh hooks for shooting in combat. Devourer as the standard shooting weapon, not great. And the Death Spitter is also not fantastic. But what gets really, really good is, let me find what it says. Just looking at, yeah, here we go. So every 3 models in the unit, 1 model can replace their Devourer of one of the weapons from the basic bio cannons list. So the bio cannons is basically your Barb Strangler and Venom Cannon. Now both of those are really, really good weapons and we'll go through them later, but basically having one of those, really, really good choice, and I would always have one of them on one of your warriors. But warriors, very good babysitting unit, properly priced to keep that synapse web up, so they're a useful unit to have. 3 wounds, it's decent unit. Termagants, there's not much to say about Termagants. They are the same pretty much as they were before. They've not changed in points wise really. Yeah, they're not much different, to be fair. What I would say is the Devourers are a very, very good gun still, assault free, and there's plenty of ways to get them nice and close. 18-inch range is decent, and as I said, you'll find that ranges are a lot more easy to get into with the speed of units and the deployment zones. So Termagants are still a good little unit. I think you'll probably only find them in accompanied with Termagants. Personally, I don't think there's many reasons to take them on their own, unless you put them in a pod with the Devourers. Same old tactics as always, but it really does still work. Gene Stealers, wow, game breaker. Gene Stealers. Gene Stealers, they've got the love that they needed. We got a taste of it in 7th edition with the pure strain within the Gene Stealer cult, and boy, these boys have got the boost they absolutely deserved. So Gene Stealers, again, efficiently pointed. So these, I believe, let me just work it out, I believe for 5 of these is 50 points. You stick on the Renal Glands and they come in 60 points. So 60 points for 5 is decent, really, really good. Very good value for points and incredibly good damage output. These guys, they hit on a 3, always hit on a 3. Strength 4, Toughness 4, 1 wound, 3 attacks. 3 attacks, decent. Leadership 9 and a 5-up save, but they have a 5-up invuln now, woohoo! Which makes them that much more survivable. Gene Stealers have 4 attacks rather than 3 if there are 10 in the unit. So if you've got a unit of 10 Gene Stealers or more, they have 4 attacks, which is crazy good. And again, like the Broodlord, these guys can charge even after they've advanced. And bearing in mind they move 8 inches, again, they're so quick, so deadly. Gene Stealers, awesome, awesome unit. One expect to see a lot of. Definitely polish them off, get them in your lists. A really reliable, solid choice. Probably in units of 20, if not units of 10. But Gene Stealers, absolutely, they're your musts. So, you know, get them in there, 100%. Hormagaunts now, a very, very effective unit. They're so quick. So moving 8 again. But the big thing with these guys is they can consolidate. They can pile in and consolidate up to 6 inches. So you can really swing in a whole leg of these guys into combat really, really quickly. So they're decent. There's not too much to say about them. If a unit contains 20 models, you can reroll wound rolls of 1 in the fight phase. Good, you probably take that many because a few of them are going to get killed. They're a great little unit basically, because whereas before they probably wouldn't get that close. You leg these guys up, assault them, get them right in the enemy's face, put in multiple other targets, and these guys will do a job. They will do a job. So, and you know, just the way that the mechanic works now in 8th edition, they're a very, very viable unit. I don't know how much I'll use them, if if I'm honest, but I think they're definitely one to look at and one worth using. Ripper Swarms, better than they used to be, much better. Basically, because with the deep strike burrow bit, it means you can hold them as a cheap unit in reserve, then pop them up anywhere, and they can be a great little objective grabbing unit. They have pretty much the same statistics as they did before: 3 wounds, 4 attacks, 6 up save. They move 6 inches, so they're not that quick, but don't really need them to be. But yeah, they have burrow, so basically you can set them up wherever you want. So they're a good little cheap unit. One I think you'll see quite a lot, because they're a great unit to hold back in reserve, because you've got complete control of where things come, when things come in and where they go, and you can hide a Ripper Swarm very well. I think multiple Ripper Swarms, great unit to come in, take an objective. Hive Guard. Hive Guard are insanely good now, absolutely brutal good. I should say we're now into the elite slots, so Hive Guard, wowee. So first, what you need to know about the Hive Guard. So in their stats line, they've got slightly worse in a way. Actually, no, let's take that back. They've not got worse, they're just different. So they move 5, so they're not very quick. Their weapon skill was a 4+, probably was generally that as well. Their ballistic skill now is a 3-up, which is a big deal, because in the last decks they went down to being hitting on a 4, and hitting on a 3 now makes them effective again. Strength 4, which is a lot worse than they used to be. Toughness 5, which is worse than they used to be. Used to be Toughness 6. Wounds 3, I think they only had 2 wounds, so they've got an extra wound, which is tasty. 2 attacks, you don't want these guys in combat anyway. 7 leadership and a 4-up save. Not bad. I think they used to have a 3-up save, I'm going to say. But guys, right, hold the phone, because the Impaler Cannon is the real deal. Wow. 36-inch range. 36 inches? Jesus. Heavy 2, same as it was before. I think so. Strength 8, definitely same as it was before. -2 rend, awesome. I'm saying rend, I probably shouldn't be saying rend. That's Age of Sigmar talk. AP -2, wowee. Apologies. If I keep saying rend, which I probably have before, that's AP. I'll try and get that out of my mind. Damage D3. That's incredible, because these guys do not need line of sight and they ignore cover. So cover's not as huge as it was before, but having that no line of sight, just awesome. Such a good weapon. The shot cannon, nowhere near as good. You don't want it, just ignore it. It's only got 24-inch range. That's pretty much all you need to know. It does it's D3 shots, just unreliable. Strength 7, not as good. -1 AP, not as good. D3 damage, the same. Better when it's shooting at vehicles, which is fine, because they'll suffer additional mortal wounds from it. But you don't want to take it. You never want to take it. And they're ugly, horrible looking gun as well. So don't take them. But I'm going to say Hive Guard, one of the ones to watch out for. Hive Guard are the real deal. Great units. Great units. Okay, let's go on to Lictors. Lictors, decent. Not amazing, but decent. They have very much similar sort of rule. They can kind of pop up anywhere. And they also good. So your opponent needs to -1 when they're shooting. And 2 if they're in cover. So that's good. They're very difficult to get to be dealt with, which is tasty. They're not characters though, so they can still be shot at pretty easy. And again, you can put them in hiding, so they can kind of deploy wherever you like. So decent. A nice little sort of 1 or 2 of them can be a little distraction unit. Pretty decent. The Maliceptor, a unit you'd never ever see, and to be honest with you, I'm not that impressed with him at a glance. I've not used him. I don't have the model, but we will go through him briefly. So he moves 7. His weapon skill changes. Ballistic skills are 5+. His strength changes. Toughness 7, which is good. 12 wounds, standard for most of our monstrous creatures. Attacks 3, which is very average. 9 leadership 9, and a 3-up save. So he starts with strength 7. He goes to strength 6, and then to 5. And that's it really. let's have a little look. He is a Synapse creature. He has Shadow in the Warp. He has a ability which is called Psychic Overload. Instead of manifesting a psychic power in the psychic phase, the Maleceptor can unleash a brain-busting psychic tendrils. If he does so, roll a dice for each enemy model within 6 inches to a maximum number of units shown in the damage chart above. On a roll of 2+, the Maleceptor deals 1 wound to that unit. It's only 1 wound. It's not that great. What's the chances of you managing? So the chart above, so basically you can do it to 6 units if there are 6 units, but it's only within 6 inches. So yes, you can put them in a pod, drop them down. If someone's all castled around, could do damage, but it's only 1. It's just 1 mortal wound. It's not that painful. It's not that great. He has a 5+ invuln, and that's it really. He's just Maleceptor Steel Pit Pants, to be honest with you. I wouldn't take him. That's that. It's a bit of a shame, but because it's a cool model, but nah, Maleceptor's still not in the running. Zoanthropes, they're good. Zoanthropes are a good one. So Zoanthropes basically, stats wise same. They've got the Neurophobe in there, so you can buy a Neurophobe for every 3, I believe. So Spirit Leech. So this is the Neurophobe's range attack, if you like. So a unit including a Neurophobe regains D3 wounds lost earlier in the battle whenever it slays an enemy model with the Smite psychic power. So that's quite nice. This is quite a nice little mechanic here. So basically, Warp Blast, when a unit manifests Smite psychic power, it inflicts D3 additional mortal wounds if the unit contains 4 or more. Okay, yeah, so the Zoanthrope, very good unit still. He has a 3+ save, which is nice. His psychic power, he basically has Smite, but obviously with a little bit buffed up. But yeah, good unit, right priced. Again, a Synapse creature, so you can use it the same. Does a little bit of damage output. And the Smite's a good power, not to be underestimated. So quite like the Zoanthropes. Not a bad unit to choose. We'll go on. Venomthropes. Venomthropes are huge, but I will have a little caveat for you. So Venomthropes, really, really important unit, as they were before. But nobody took Venomthropes. And why did no one take Venomthropes? Because everybody took Malanthropes. Now, I believe, I've heard from quite a reliable source that the Malanthrope will work in a similar way. So, I only have 1 Venomthrope built and painted. I have a few others, old of the fine cast ones, that I never got around to really building and made because they released the rules for the Malanthrope. So they're just sitting in my bits box basically. Now I am tempted to kind of build these and paint these, but I'm also kind of thinking that probably I won't bother because the Malanthrope is going to do the job, I believe, just as well, if not better. So keep that in your hat, under your hat, wherever, up your sleeve, whatever you want to do it. But basically, hopefully a lot of you got Malanthropes because they were so damn good in the last edition and were always my biggest advice as an auto include. I believe they still will be similar, so just hold tight guys, because I think that's coming down the reins very, very quickly. But let's talk about the Venomthrope, because I think you'll probably be able to think about these rules similar. I might be wrong, but we'll see. So, same stats as they used to be, basically 3 wounds, which is tasty, is a little bit better than they used to be. But other than that, they're the same. Now, the nice thing about them is his special rule now, it works slightly different. So the opponent must subtract 1 from the hit roll for ranged weapons. And I've just noticed this is interesting. Your opponent must subtract 1 to hit rolls for ranged weapons that target infantry units within 3 inches of a friendly Hive Fleet Venomthrope. Now that's quite interesting actually, and that I think is a little bit of a game changer. Maybe not so good as I thought, because actually it's not going to help your big guys hiding at the back. It's only going to safeguard your little guys. Maybe not so good. But that's the big deal. So basically it's -1 for them to hit, which does stop a lot of their long range nasty shooting doing so much damage so quickly. But ultimately that long range nasty shooting is probably going to come at your big guys, and not having that -1 against them is actually a big deal. Wow, and I did not realise that, guys. So you're learning these things as you go. So The other thing about them is you need to take them in units of 3. Ugh. So that means they do cost about just over 100 points, I think, for a unit of 3. Other than that, their toxic lashes now mean that they still fight even if they die, which is okay. And they can shoot them as well within 6 inches, so not too bad, but nothing too crazy. Toxic miasma, basically D6, enemy units within 1 of the Venom Throat on a 5+ suffer a mortal wound. So it's quite good. They're not bad in combat, they're pretty good, but actually I thought they were a lot better because I thought they were going to give you -1 against everything. It's not, it's only infantry, so actually maybe Venom Throat's not so much of an auto-include. We'll see what happens with Venom Throat, but I suspect it'll be similar, which is a big deal because maybe they're not so good, but they will definitely keep your Termagants alive, and I suppose if you want to play that tactic, still very effective. Pyrovores, so the crappiest unit in the whole of 40k, gets a massive uplift. He's decent now, not broken, not an auto-include. Probably won't see him very much because there's so many other good stuff in this index, but stat line's the same. Does have 4 wounds now though, so it goes up a little bit. His Flame Spout is better. It's range 10, which is decent, so it's almost like a torrent, which is what we begged for. It's Assault D6, Strength 5, -1 AP and 1 damage. Automatically hits because it's a flamer. And yeah, he's decent. He's very, very decent. He has Acid Blood, so as he gets hurt, he will also do mortal wounds on enemies as well attacking him. Yeah, and when he dies, he again showers the enemy with more mortal wounds. So you don't want to kill him in combat. You generally want to kill him from shooting. But he's not a bad unit. Really, the right price, and has an effective use on the battlefield. So decent. Haruspex, one of the most expensive units now in the index, and a bit of a beast. So. Stats wise, movement 7, his weapon skill starts off at 4+, and his ballistic skill starts at 4+, his strength starts at 7, his toughness is 8, which is crazy good, 13 wounds, decent, attacks 4, which is not a big deal because I'll go into that in a minute, leadership 6, he's not a synapse creature, it's a free up save. So his weapons, he has a grasping tongue, great, 12-inch range, strength 6, -3 AP, D3 damage, decent. And he can also use that in combat, basically it's like a pistol weapon again. Ravenous Maw, now Ravenous Maw makes D3 hits with the attacks instead of 1. So this weapon is going to be still his own user, strength, so it's going to be strength 7 with no damage. But for each attack, so if you use all of the attacks on that, you do 4 dice and it's D3 for each one of those, and that's how many attacks he gets. So you can imagine he can get, my maths is pretty crap, and get about 12 attacks, which is awesome. And then his Shoveling Claws are strength ×2, so again that takes him up to 14 strength, -3 AP and D6 damage. So it's good, particularly, the thing is he's only hitting on 4s, so with four attacks, yeah, maybe not so good with them, but still decent. But he has some really cool rules. So he has the Acid Blood again, so as he dies he hurts things close to him. But he has Rapturous Hunger. So each time the Haruspex slays an enemy with the Ravenous Maw, it can immediately make an extra attack with the Shoveling Claws. In addition, at the end of the fight phase, in which the Haruspex slew an enemy with its Ravenous Maw, it regains 1 wound lost earlier in the battle. That's damn good, because that means basically the Ravenous Maw goes in with tons of attacks because it's D3 for each attack. Then each one he managed to kill something, then he uses the Shoveling Claws to then hopefully kill some more. So he's a decent unit, he's pretty expensive, but with a movement of 7 and lots of potential to first turn charge with the use of other units, he's a good unit. Definitely one I'm excited to use a bit more. So good unit and such a cool model, so how cool to be able to use him. Let's go on. Death Leaper comes under an elite, which is why I didn't see him in the HQs. Death Leaper is the same as a normal Lictor, apart from he is better strength, he's strength 6. Still toughness 4, he has 6 wounds, so but he is a character, so cannot be targeted anyway unless he's the closest model. But also he is minus 2 off the attacks, off the shooting, which is great. And an extra 1, so he's -3 if he's in cover, which is really difficult to target anyway. And he has a really cool rule, which is it's after me. Basically, he can at any point he can pop up within 6 inches of a character, basically then just like pile him, which is incredible. So he's great at sniping out characters at the battle back of the board. If I can get my words out. So he's a really good unit, very effective. If you've got about 100 odd points to spare, he's a good one to take in there, because he will be a nuisance, and he's very good at taking out those buffing units that are hiding at the back of the board. So definitely an effective use on the battlefield. I do like the Death Leaper. Let's go on. So Tyranid strikes, same as Tyranid warriors. They've got the points decreased to make them effective. They're a bit quicker. Other than that, they're the same as a normal warrior. So they're okay. They're okay. The Red Terror. Red Terror is a bit more usable. He is a character again. He hits better. He hits on a 2+, which is good, and he has 5 attacks, which is nice. So he's okay. He's okay. He's not awesome. He has a swallow ability again, and it's similar, but he's more likely to hit more often because of his weapon skill. So it's going to be more useful. So I do quite like the Red Terror. I think he's going to be a fun unit to use. Definitely one that is playable now, but still not the best. But I think he's decent. And Raveners are good. Raveners will have a use. They have that deep strike ability. They're very quick, and they're decent. Rending Claws are always good. Get those 6s with the -4 is incredibly powerful. Yep, so Raveners not too bad in a nutshell. Again, usable, which is, I suppose, definitely the good thing. To be fair, they're similar as they were before. They were usable before in certain ways. They just weren't the strongest, and I think one of the things with this Tyranid, there's so many good units in this Tyranid Codex. Some of the ones for the sort of the alsos might not get too many runs out, to be fair, but I'd like to use Raveners again, so expect them to see them in my battle reports. They're a solid unit. Sky Slasher Swarm, just not even going to go into them. They are just quicker Ripper Swarms. So they are just Ripper Swarms, so no difference there. Not ones to really worry too much about, to be fair. Gargoyles are alright, quicker Termagants. They do have their Blinding Venom, which basically subtracts 1 to hit from the units until the end of the next turn. So that's okay. They're just not that great, really. They're okay. They're okay. I just don't think you're going to see them very much, to be honest. Harpies, however, now, the only time you ever see a Harpy before was in a Skyblight formation because they were pants, but now they are seriously good. So we'll quickly go through. So their movement can go up to 30 inches. Wow, because they can fly. 30 inches, and bear in mind, after that 30 inches they can then charge. What the hell? So pretty much guaranteed first turn charge for these guys. Insane. They hit on 4s for both shooting and for combat. Average. Strength 6, it's okay. Toughness 6, better than it used to be, but you know, that's not such a big deal anymore anyway, to be fair. Wounds 12, which is great. 3 attacks, which is average, and a 4+ save. So the weapons they can take are a heavy Venom Cannon, which is now crazy good, 36-inch range, Assault D3, Strength 9, -1 AP, D3 damage, so it's really good. Stinger Salvos they always have, so it's Assault 4, Strength 5, -1 AP and 1 damage, and the Strangleform Cannon, which is 36-inch range, Assault D6, Strength 7, -1, 2 damage. Strangleform Cannon, insanely good. So not quite as good anti-vehicle, but Strength 7, -1, 2 damage is crazy good. D6 Assault is really worth having. So, yeah. And this guy is not set up with one of them. He's set up with 2 of them. 2 D6 shots. Strength 7, -1, 2 damage. Dear God, that's a lot of shooting. And these are cheap. Mega cheap units. So good. So good. Also, so you have like the Spore Mine thing, which I'm not going to go into. We'll cover it more. We'll do some full details on him. He has a Sonic Screech, which is really nice. So when he assaults, that unit then can't attack him back that round of combat. That's crazy cool. So Harpies, definitely dark horse of this index. One I think you see a lot of. Really shooty, great unit. Awesome. Hive Chrome, not quite as good. So it's kind of gone the opposite way. The dual cannons, okay. D6 shots, strength 6, -1, 1 damage. It's pretty good. 80-inch range though, so it's not even like a Torrent Flamer. It's not that great. Stinger Salvo, same as we spoke to before. Tentacles, again, they're great against vehicles. They do like mortal damage, mortal wounds. So they can reroll failed hit rolls against flying units. But then against everything else, they'll just do on a wound roll 6+. They inflict D3 mortal wounds. In combat, they're okay, not wonderful. But yeah, I wouldn't take Hive Prone. No point. No point taking Hive Prone. Always take the Harpies. Much better unit. Much better unit. If you've got Hive Prone, start cutting them up. They need to be Harpies now. That would be my advice. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Hive Prone's okay. He's not bad, but absolutely the Harpy's the way to go, 100%. Mucilid Spore Mines, not really going to go into them too much. They're okay, and Spore Mines again, same sort of thing. They can do mortal wounds again, basically when they explode, but they're okay. They're not bad. Tyrannocyte. Let's talk about Tyrannocyte. Tyrannocyte is a very, very good unit. Very, very good in many ways. Of course, it is still used to transport your guys. It can transport your little guys, and it can also transport one monster, which is cool. But also, it's lost all those annoying rules where it couldn't be like a scoring unit, and it couldn't be this, and it couldn't be that. It's just a monster now. So it always hits on 5 in combat. 5's at shooting. It is strength, starts off at 5, it gets reduced down as it gets damage. Its toughness is 6, and its wounds 12. Attack starts with D6, goes down to 1 when it's almost dead. Has leadership 7 and a 4+. Has instinctive behavior as well, so it's just a normal unit now, which is cool, that can carry something, which is awesome. But where it gets mental is it can take 5 Death Spitters, 5 Barb Stranglers, or 5 Venom Cannons. Barb Stranglers are so good. They're like D6 shots each. So 5 D6 shots. Crazy, crazy good. And they get pluses if they're shooting at units that are over 10. So that's crazy. That's so good. So not only is this thing going to drop your guys where they need to go, because basically it can drop something in and then something can get out within 9 inches of an enemy unit, which is crazy. But also it can shoot the hell out of something. So the Tyrannocyte is such a useful model, such a useful guy. Same, it's such an ugly model. But Tyrannocytes, expect to see the Swarm Lord in a Tyrannocyte. Really expect that to happen. It's a real thing. So Carnifexes, let's go on to Carnifexes. So we're on to heavy supports. I just got those last units for all fast attack, by the way. We've gone on to Carnifexes. Carnifexes are mega cheap now, mega cheap. They are decent. We'll run through the stats. They are a movement of 7. They have a weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 4. So that's like hitting on 4, hitting on 4. Strength 6, toughness 7, 8 wounds, 4 attacks, 6 leadership, and a 3-up save. So that's good in itself. Their weapons, they can take the old Bioplasma, so they can take Screamer Killers, which are Assault D3, Strength 7, -3 AP, and damage 1. They all have Bone Maces, so Strength 8, -1 D3 damage, which is good. They have Crushing Claws, which is the same as the Carnifexes, as the Termagants, so ×2 Strength, which is great, but again you're -1 to hit, so you ain't going to be taking that very much, to be fair. Carnifexes with Crushing Claws, waste of time, because you're only going to be hitting on 5s, which is stupid. So the Scythe Talons is the one you're going to go for, because their user strength, which is only strength 6, which is just interesting, because Carnifexes is not the same as they used to be. So whereas Carnifexes had that fluff of being basically the strongest, nastiest thing within a Tyranid Codex, they always used to be like strength 10, they used to be just brutal. They're not like that anymore. They're just a sort of medium-sized monster that is pretty vicious. So, and they're like bulls, so they just stampede in. So they're cool, but you've got to kind of think of them slightly different. They're not the same as they used to be. So the Talons, as we said, the Talons are the way to go. And you can give them all the bioweapons again. So they're much more useful now to be shooty, I would say. But they're decent in combat as well. They have a living battering ram, similar to they used to. So on a 4+, the enemy model suffers a mortal wound. So not D3 like old One Eye, but they do 1 mortal wound. And they've got a nice little rule called Monstrous Brood, which is basically you can buy a unit of 3 of them, but then once you deploy them, they all become separate units, which is quite cool. I do like that. So Carnifexes, for the price they cost, and they are so mega cheap. They're like well under 100 points for a basic loadout. They're a good unit. They're a very strong unit. Really recommend them. Biovores, absolutely epic. Really cool. But there is one thing about the Biovores that I've kind of linked onto that I'm not sure whether it's a mistake or whether I'm missing something. So if I'm missing something, please do put it in the comments. But basically the way the Biovores work is, so again, their stat line is pretty much the same. The Spore Mine launcher is 38 inches, it's a heavy one. And the cool thing with the Spore Mine is if it hits, so they only hit on 4s, but if it hits, you roll a dice. On a 1 it does nothing. On a 2 to 5 it does a mortal wound, and on a 6 it does D3 mortal wounds. So 3 of those guys will be really effective at long range. Now, but the big thing for me that I'm not so sure about is, well, there's a couple of things actually. One, I'm pretty sure it's going to be FAQ'd, but at the moment, if it misses, it makes a Spore Mine. So surely you're going to need reinforcement points for that. So that's interesting, because that's a bit like meh. But also, on here, I can't see anywhere that it says that it works with indirect fire, which means that now you will need line of sight with the Biovores, which means you can't hide them. And I'm not sure whether that's a mistake, because that seems a bit weird. Because Biovores, they're kind of lobbing up stuff over the top, but nowhere does it say that you don't need line of sight. So unless I'm missing something, these guys now need to see stuff, and it's a heavy weapon. So you might be moving these guys around a lot more, and if they're -1 to hit and they're hitting on 5s, they're not going to do much cop. So interesting one. We'll have to wait and see. So let's go on to the Trigon Prime. So Trigon Prime is one of the All-Stars again. This guy is an absolute beast. Beast mode, this guy. So, stats wise, he moves 9 inches. His weapon skill is a 3+. His ballistic skill is a 4+. So, which is fine. He's not really a shooty creature. Hitting on 3s is decent. Strength 7, toughness 6, 12 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 9. 3+ save. And you might think, well, that's nothing special. But I tell you what, it is something special when you look at his goddamn massive Scything Talons. His massive Scything Talons, if you bear in mind he has 6 attacks, he has +1 because he has 2 sets of these Scything Talons. So that means he has 7 attacks. They hit on 3s. The Scything Talons are user strength, so strength 7, -3 AP, D6 damage each. Wow. If you roll hot on this guy, he'll take just about anything out in 1 round of combat. That is incredible. He also has a very cool rule, which is Subterranean Assault, which is similar to what he used to have. He can pop up anywhere on the board within 9 inches of the enemy, which is cool, pretty much same as any deep strike for any unit in the game. But he also then makes a tunnel, so another unit can come up, an infantry model can come up, you know, close to him and within 9 inches of the enemy. So he is correctly priced, so he's not cheap, but he is an absolute beast. Absolute beast. And what I haven't been mentioning is obviously the adrenal glands and toxin sacs, which I'll talk a little bit about at the end, to be fair, to put all in, but that will make him even better. Trigon's the same. His shooting is not, so the Trigon Prime has a bit more shooting. His plasma shooting is like twice as many shots, but basically the Trigon is very same. He's not a synapse creature, the Trigon Prime is. Other than that, they're very similar. Not much difference in them at all. The Morlock's a cheap unit, which makes him usable. He's not as sort of frightening as he was before, because basically he does a mortal wound to anything that he is close to. So you can't deploy it onto something, you can deploy right next to it, and then every unit within range of him roll a d6 on a 2 to 3, they do 1 mortal wound. On a 4 or 5, they do d3 mortal wounds. On a 6, they do 3 mortal wounds. So the Morlock's pretty good, but you need multiple to really be dangerous, and they can't be within 6 inches of each other. So the Morlock is a cheap destruction, like a disruption unit. So you'll still see them. He's still a useful unit, but not as deadly as he used to be. In the combat, it's the same again. So you know, he doesn't have the big Scythe Talons, he only has the normal ones, so because of that he's not really scary in combat. In fact, he's not really scary at all. So yeah, he won't do very well once he comes up. He just will kind of be there. He's there for an objective, or he's there just to kind of, you know, strip a couple of wounds off, cause a destruction. Why can I not say that? Disruption to the enemy. They'll have to then focus on him. So that's what he's there for. Let's go on to the Exocrine. Probably, with the exception of the Swarm Lord, the Exocrine is the best unit in this book by far. This guy is incredible. So the Exocrine, let's quickly go through his stats. It's not what it's all about. So his stats: he moves 6, his weapon skill is +4, his ballistic skill is +4, so hits on 4s. We'll see where that comes in a minute. His strength is 7, his toughness is 8, so he's very hard to deal with. He's got 12 wounds, he has 3 attacks, but that does go down. His leadership is 6, and he has a 3-up save. He's not a synapse creature, so we will need him babysitted 100%, because he needs to shoot at what you want him to shoot at. His Bioplasma Cannon is insanely good now. So it's heavy 6, strength 7, -3 AP, and damage 2. But, and this is the big but, if this model does not move in the movement phase, you can add 1 to his hit rolls. He's suddenly hitting on 3s. That is insane. And then Weapon Blast. If this model does not move in your movement phase, it can shoot all its weapons twice in your shooting phase. That's 12 shots, strength 7, -3 AP, 2 damage, hitting on 3s, 36-inch range. Yes please, give me lots of these guys. These are insane. Exocrines are the future. Exocrines are what you need. Exocrines is what I'm working on. Exocrines, Exocrines, Exocrines. You've heard it here first. Right guys. Tranifexes. Tranifexes, not sure. So Tranifexes are a hell of a lot better than they used to be. They are much more usable. They're much more the right points. I wish they still had the 2-up save. They don't. They now only have a 3-up save. They are toughness 8. They have 14 wounds. But let's talk more importantly about their weapons. So, and they still only hit on a 4, which is the bit of a killer. So, their weapons. The acid spray is a heavy flamer basically. So it's D6 shots. It's within 18 range, so it's like a long range flamer, which is decent. -1 AP, D3 damage. Pretty good. Automatically hits. It's not bad at all. It's a decent weapon. Flesh Borer Hives, pretty crazy. So they are heavy 20, strength 5 now, which is nice. No AP, no just 1 damage. But they come into their own in a minute, which we'll go over. The Rupture Cannon is now much more usable. It's 48-inch range, which is the same. Heavy 2, strength 10, -1 AP, 2 damage. But if both shots with a weapon hit, so only hits on a 4 though, if both shots hit, the AP of the weapon goes up to -4 and the damage is D6. So that's where you use your command points on. So if you take these guys, have your command points ready each turn, because you're going to be using them to try and make sure that the Tranifex's Rupture Cannon hits, because if they both hit, man, it kills stuff. It's great. Stinger Salvos, same as we talked about, I'm not going to go into that. The Bio Tank special rule means basically it can move and shoot its heavy weapons, which is cool, with no, basically, no minus. Weapon Blast. Now this is where those Flesh Borer Hives really come into their own. So, Weapon Blast, Weapon Beast, and I think that's what the Exocrines was as well, so apologies guys for my bad English. So, if this model does not move in the movement phase, it can shoot all its weapons twice in the shooting phase. 40 shots from the Flesh Borer Hives. 40 shots. Now only 18-inch range, but 40 shots. Think about that, guys, for a minute. Toxicrime. He's okay. Yeah, he's just not really much to talk about, to be honest with you. Yeah, he's okay. He's okay. I must quickly go over him because you need to know. So his movement is 8. His weapon skill starts at +4. His ballistic skill is +4. Strength starts at 7. 12 wounds, 6 attacks, quite a lot of attacks, which is good. 7 leadership. He's not a silence creature, has a 3-up save. Choking Spores, a 12-inch range, assault D6, strength 3 minus, sorry, it's 0 AP, D3 damage. You can reroll failed wound rolls with this weapon. In addition, units attacked by this weapon do not gain any bonuses on their saving throw if they're in cover, so it ignores cover basically. Massive Toxic Lashes. You can use them to shoot. They are basically -1 AP D3 and they are strength 7. Massive Toxic Lashes, again the same. You can re-roll hits with them. He has Acid Blood again. Death Frenzy again. Nothing really more to talk about him. He's okay. He's not too badly pointed. He's alright. I don't think he's going to be in most lists. The Sporocyst, I think, is the most ugliest model ever made. Just shoots out pods still. Very little interest in it. Not going to really go into much more details. And that's it, guys. That is all your units covered. So, in a nutshell, what to go for, what not to go for. What to definitely go for? The Swarm Lord, Hive Tyrants. Awesome, awesome units. Brood Lords, absolutely. Brood Lords are worth taking. They are the ones to go for. Termagants, 100%. Try Tyranid Primes to support your back line. Absolutely go with those guys. Tyranid Warriors, again, cheap, cheerful, Synapse creature. Gene Stealers, awesome offensive unit. Lots of units of them. Very, very good. Termagants, use them with your Termagants. Use them with your Termagants. Hormagaunts, if you got points. If you want a distraction unit, they're very, very good. Ripper Swarms, save your points for Ripper Swarms, chuck them in late game, they can pop up everywhere, take objectives, very, very cheap and cheerful. Hive Guard, all stars, very, very good. Shooting unit, hide them, shooting great, awesome, awesome, awesome. I didn't even talk about Tyrant Guard. Tyrant Guard, nah, not very good. They're basically, they can stop your Tyrants being sniped, basically, in a nutshell. What else do you want? What else do you need? Venom Throats, decent for keeping little guys alive. We found out today, not so good at keeping big guys alive. And Harpies, all stars. Harpies are worth taking, absolutely. Tyrannocytes, great for getting things like Swarm Lord in combat. Trigon Primes, killer great unit. Carnifexes, very, very good. Trigons, good. Morlocks, not so good anymore. Exocrines, incredible. Always take Exocrines, I think. And that is your rundown. So, what I didn't say, which I will cover very, very briefly for you guys before we call this a end, and hopefully it has been of use for you, and you've got an idea of what to take and what not to take. So, what I will talk about very, very briefly is let's talk about adrenal glands and toxin sacs. So adrenal glands will mean you add 1 to the distance you can move in advancing or charging. Very, very good for those deep strike units that you want to make that 9 inches and 8 inches on a much more viable range charge. Toxin sacs, they do an additional 1 damage for every 6 you roll in your assaults. So again, great to kind of stick on your little guys, particularly things like Hormagaunts, suddenly make them start to put a lot more damage in. So they're a very, very good, very, very good unit. So hopefully that has been useful for you guys. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what units to start thinking about and putting in your armies. I know kind of where things are going at the moment with Tyranids. So if you've got any questions, please do put them in the comments below. If there's something you want me to cover in more detail, I absolutely will do. And again, talk to each other. We're all learning together, guys. So if you found something in there, great combination, something really effective, stick it in the comments below, because I know people will want to hear it. But thanks very much for watching, guys, and until the next video, I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.